What if I told you your spouse's tax problems could ruin your credit, drain your bank account, and even cost you your home without you even knowing it? If your spouse hasn't filed tax returns in years, if the IRS is sending scary notices to your home, or you just discovered about a hidden tax debt, you need to hear and watch this video. Because today I'm answering the 8 most urgent questions every spouse should be asking before it's too late. Hi, my name is Carlos Samaniego, founder of Tax Debt Consultants. And this topic really hits close to home to me because I went 8 years with not filing my own taxes. 8 years. And then I married my spouse, and she married into my tax problems. So what I did is that I wrote down 8 questions that need to be answered, that 8 questions that spouses actually want to know about because they don't know. In fact, I just had a client that came in that just found out that their spouse had been hiding the non-filing of their tax returns for years. So what do? Question 1. If you just found out your spouse hasn't filed tax returns in years, what do you need to do? The most important thing is that freaking out's not going to fix it, but action will. The first thing we need to do is find out when was the last year that tax returns weren't filed. Because here's the thing, when you don't file a tax return, the IRS wants you to file your tax returns, but sometimes there's certain years that they don't want. So we need to find out what tax returns weren't filed. Once we know what tax returns weren't filed, we need to pull together the W-2s, the 1099s, the information that we need to file the tax return. But if you don't have that information, don't worry, because we can get that information from the IRS. The next step is that you need to talk to somebody that understands how to file unfiled tax returns. A tax pro, like myself, who knows what tax returns the IRS wants and what the tax returns the IRS doesn't want. But the most important thing to understand, there is a solution. As long as we don't freak out, we get the information put together, and then we file the returns that are missing that the IRS wants. Question number 2 I always get is, am I legally responsible for my spouse's tax debt? Now, here's the thing. If you guys both filed a joint tax returns, congratulations. You just married into their tax mess. That's if you filed a joint tax return. But you don't have to wave the white flag just yet. If you did do that, file a joint return, but you had no idea what you were filing, there may be a possibility you may receive innocent spouse relief that might save you. Most important thing to understand is that talk to a tax expert that understands that and can find out if you are legally responsible for your spouse's tax debt. Again, if the tax debt came into your marriage, kind of like in my situation where I did not file my taxes for years and had tax debt prior to me getting married, you would not be responsible for your spouse's tax debt. So again, talk to a tax professional like ourselves that can help you with that. The next question we have here, will the IRS come after me if my spouse owes back taxes? Short answer is, if your spouse owes back taxes, yes, they will come after you if you filed a joint return, as I mentioned before, because you're just as guilty as the spouse is. That's if you filed a joint tax return. Now, if you filed separate tax returns, you might be safe. But don't bet your last dollar on it. What you want to do, again, you want to get help to find out what part of the taxes you may or may not be responsible for. Don't just assume because there's a tax debt that you're responsible for it. We're here to help you to figure out what is the best way to figure that out. Next question, question number 4. Can the IRS take money from your joint bank accounts? Bottom line, if your name is on the bank account, if you guys have a bank account and both your names on it, and one of the spouses or both of the spouses owe the tax debt, it's fair game to the IRS. They will go after the money. Now let's just say one spouse owes the tax debt and the other spouse doesn't, but you still have a joint bank account. Guess what? The bank account is joint gain. The IRS just sees that person's social security number on the bank account, and they will take the money out of the bank account. Doesn't matter if it's your money and you have no responsibility for it because it's a joint bank account. They can go after that money. So what I normally recommend, if you know your spouse has a tax debt and that you are not legally responsible for that tax debt, you may want to protect yourself and split those bank accounts before Uncle Sam takes a hit out of that. Next question. Will this affect my credit score even if I had nothing to do with it? So, will my spouse's tax debt affect my credit score if I had nothing to do with it? Now, the IRS doesn't report to to the credit bureaus. They stopped doing that quite a few years ago. But there are some tax liens that will get reported to the credit bureaus. If you have a state like the state of California, the Franchise Tax Board, if you get a tax lien with them, that does go on your credit. So the other thing you need to be thinking about, your spouse's tax mess could equal a financial headache. It is what it is. You can't ignore it. You're going to feel the pain because if you have if your spouse has a tax issue and it does go on your credit, and in the future you're trying to refinance a home, purchase a home, that issue could pop up because it did affect the credit. Again, I hope you understand that in regards to, can tax debt go onto the credit score? That is a big maybe, depending on whether it was an IRS tax debt or state of California or a state tax debt. Next most common question I have is, what happens if my spouse gets audited? Will I be involved? If you file jointly, you are part of the audit. Bottom line. If it's a joint return, you're going to be part of the audit. If you filed separately, more than likely you will not be part of the audit, but got to be careful, especially if you live in a community property state. If the IRS starts digging, you could be potentially part of the audit. What you want to do is just cover yourself, get a tax pro before the IRS can turn your life upside down in a tax audit. 2 more questions to go. Can the IRS seize our home because of my spouse's tax debt? If you own your home, let me back up here. It's very rare for the IRS to try to seize a home. That is a very rare possibility. However, is it possible? Yes, it's possible. If you own it together, you're in a danger zone. If you have investment properties, not your primary home, it is possible they could take the investment properties or try to sell the investment properties to fulfill your tax debt. Now, if there's an IRS lien on the home, that doesn't mean that they're going to seize the property, but it does mean that the IRS will try to collect if you try to refinance or sell the home. Last question I have for today. How do I know if my spouse is telling me the whole truth about the tax situation? Bottom line, this is a tough one because spouses forget to mention about tax debt. That's a red flag. It really is. What we need to do, if you believe that there may be a tax issue, your spouse may be hiding a tax problem, you may want to look into getting their IRS transcripts to confirm that there is no tax debt. If you're thinking about getting married, this might be a very important step. Besides looking at a credit report, is possibly getting IRS transcripts to make sure they've been filing all their tax returns and have no tax debt. If you're getting the runaround, again, give us a call. Call a tax pro and find out the truth about what's happening with you and your spouse. I hope these questions answered a lot of questions. I still have 20 more questions I will be answering over the next several weeks. And if you need help with your tax problems, always feel free to give us a call at 909-570-1103 or heading over to taxdebtconsultant.com. taxdebtconsultant.com. And if you want to get my free book, How to Make the IRS an Offer They Can't Refuse, you can always go to taxdebtbook.com. Taxdebtbook.com. Talk to you later.